Alrighty, guys. Thanks for joining me. This is your host, ID Jester. So, I thought I'd take a minute here and talk about game complexity. When is it a good thing? When is it a bad thing? And kind of go over my thoughts and opinions about game complexity. I just did all my baseball card and dice reviews recently. And so that's, obviously had me a chance to think about the different systems, the different games, the complexity, difficulty, factor into each of my reviews and everything. And then I had something happen in a game the other day that also made me think about it. So I thought maybe I would like to spend a few minutes talking about game complexity. When is it a good thing? When is it a bad thing? And kind of give you my overview and thoughts and maybe get a discussion started, maybe continue this afterwards. So if you have your own thoughts, be sure to leave them down below, and maybe with part 2, we'll highlight some of those thoughts and talk about them. So let's assume that I'm going to create a baseball game. I'm a budding game designer. I'm thinking about creating a baseball game, and I'm trying to decide what exactly am I going to do with my game. So basically, I'm going to start and I'm going to say, here's going to be my game. I'm going to have 2 teams, Team A and Team B. I'm going to roll a 6-sided dice, and on a 1, 2, 3, Team A is going to win. On a 4, 5, or 6, Team B is going to win. And let's go ahead and roll the dice. And there you go. Team A wins this one. All right. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, there it is. And of course, it's a doubleheader today, so we're going to roll the dice again and see who wins game number 2 of this series. Oh, and Team B wins that, so each team is 1-1. So, complexity pretty not too complex there. By the way, I'm licensing this. This is my new baseball game. It's called Dice Roll Baseball. You can pick it up at all your favorite shops or retailers. You can send me a PayPal payment of $24.95 to idjesterlive@gmail.com. And includes 1 season of your choice. And I've got a football version, a basketball version, and a hockey version to come. Just for Dave Garner, I decided to work on a hockey version. It's similar. It's a little bit different, the hockey version, in that in a 1, 2, or 3, Team B wins, and on a 4, 5, or 6, Team A wins. So there's a little bit of difference there between the hockey version and the baseball version. But you can see when we're talking about complexity, we're talking about something, obviously this is about the simplest game that we could ever devise. And now we have to move up from there. If I assume, people might not be too interested. They might be bored in this. I'm going to have to add a little bit more to it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another 6-sided dice. Yeah, let's do that. So we're going to add a second 6-sided dice. And this is going to be the red team. There we go. So we got a blue dice for the Team A and a red dice for Team B. So now I say, whichever one rolls higher, that is the winner of the game. And that'll give us our final score from this baseball game. And so here it is. Game number 1 goes 6-5 for the red team. So we'll assume it's the Red Sox versus the Toronto Blue Jays. So the Red Sox take this one 6-5, and in game 2, it's 4-1 Blue Jays. They come back and take this game 4-1. Pretty good game. Again, this is going to be, we're going to call this game Double Roll Baseball. And again, it'll be located at all your favorite realtors, or, PayPal payment, idjesterlive@gmail.com, $24.95. Season of your choice. So yeah, I've added a little bit of complexity to my game by adding that extra dice. Now, was that a good choice? Was it a bad choice? Did it improve my game from the original game or not? It did add some complexity, because now we got two dice as opposed to 1 dice. And of course, this is basic overview stuff, right? The only problem is going to be, obviously, when all of a sudden we roll, doubles, right? So all of a sudden I have to roll a doubles, which of course I probably won't be able to do. in probably forever. Oh, Red Sox took that one 3-1. And Red Sox win again 5-4. Look at the Red Sox are on a roll. Oh, the Blue Jays won that 5-4. 6-3 Blue Jays, and Blue Jays have won 2 in a row now. The Red Sox won 4-3. And Blue Jays again 6-2. Look at them go. And Blue Jays again 5-3. The Red Sox really falling apart. Oh, there we go. We got a 4-4. So what do I do with the tie now? Oh my gosh, right? Because now I have to devise rules for when, because we know baseball doesn't end in a tie, unlike a lot of other sports, right? So now I got to devise extra rules for this. So I added the complexity by adding an extra dice, but now I've got to come up with rules or some kind of way to break that. And the other thing is, well, what I'm going to do, if I roll a d6 to get a score, that's pretty good. But what happens, where's 0? Obviously, a team can lose 4-0 or whatever. What am I going to do about that? So now I'm going to have to add some complexity again to my game system, right? So now I've got to decide, how am I going to do this? Obviously, I could switch to maybe like 10-sided dice, right? So I could do, we'll get to that in a second. So what I could do is I could do, you know what I'll do? I'll make a chart. I'll make a chart. If it's a tie, right? Then you're going to roll on the chart, right? So then I look at, I make a little chart here, and there we go. I've created this little chart, and obviously I'd have another chart for the other team, and I roll the dice, and if it ends up at, whatever the double number is, then you look at here, and it'll tell you what you score. So we had rolled 4-4, so I would look, and on the chart it would be the Red Sox scored 4, and maybe the Blue Jays, under their 4, it would say, 2 runs or whatever, whatever I decided to put on their chart, right? Let's say if we can get doubles that are something else here. Now, of course, I can't roll doubles. Why can't I roll the double that I need? That would be super good. Oh, there it is, double ones. All right, so then on my chart, I look at the Red Sox and it says, go to chart A. So then I got to get another chart out and roll on chart A. So I've added some complexity to my baseball game. Was it a good extra complexity? Was it well designed? Is it helpful to the game and stuff? And in this case, for me personally, I don't think that is good complexity, because now you've got a chart that you roll on that tells you to go to another chart, to go roll on that chart, when you could have done something like, instead of this, right, what we're going to need to do is create something more like this, right? So now we're going to give the Red Sox and give them like a season index and give them an adjustment number, and then maybe we'll have to throw in a 10-sided dice and go from 1 to 10 so we have better results from that, right? So now if we end up 1-1, then we roll 10-sided dice to see, we roll the 10-sided dice for each team and see their chart and see what they end up getting, which gives us more variety. We don't have to spend time rolling to roll on another chart, to look at another chart, to look at another result or anything like that. It's all done much better than in example number 1. So complexity in a game system obviously is essential to get anything from rolling a dice and looking at 1, 2, or 3, team A wins, 4, 5, or 6, team B wins. So there's always that, obviously, eventually you have to work your way up to where you're going to have stats and ratings and charts and all kinds of different things to kind of simulate what you need to represent in your game. Games don't necessarily need to have a lot of complexity to be good games. There's a lot of fun games that Dave Gardner is doing on his channel where you basically roll the dice and it gives you the total points for the half. And then you roll them again and it tells you how many points he scored in the second half. You add those two up and boom, you're done. Obviously, you don't feel what happens in that game because it's very simplistic in nature and design, but it gives you a good results and it gives you good outcomes and it's quick and it's easy. So a game system doesn't necessarily need to have complexity to be a good game. There's a difference between being a good game, being a good, well-designed game, and having a complex game. Just because you're a complex game does not mean that you are a good game. We did our game reviews. Some of our games that ranked up in the 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 category fall into that exact thing where they're complex games, but the way they make the complexity isn't good for the players to have a good flow to the game, spend a lot of extra time rolling on charts, looking up results, unneededly rolling for things that hardly ever happen. These are kind of, outliners for what I would say bad game design, right? Game complexity, like I said, does not mean it's a good game or a bad game at all. What makes a good game or a bad game is good game design that works with how it's doing. Again, if I'm just taking this little chart here and I'm using it, right? This is basically a wasted roll for my players because half the time they're not even going to get a result. So if I was to design charts to say, okay, go to this chart to roll to figure out which chart you're going to, this is a roll that half the time isn't going to give me a result. Or more than half the time, it's not even going to give me a result. So that's just wasted game time, right? The player could be doing something else instead of rolling on this chart to roll on this chart. When you could have designed it where they give the result to you. If you need to expand your ratings, you need to add qualifiers, you need to add stats or whatever you need to do to make it fit into your game system. This chart for me is much better than this chart because this is going to be a result that my player is going to use to get it, and it's going to be much quicker and easier for them. Like I said, quickness of game, complexity of game doesn't necessarily make it a good game. What has to happen to be a good game is your complexity must be for a good reason. If I'm going to add in, I've added in this extra dice, right? I've added in this extra dice to make my game more complex, but now I've run into an issue. And it's how I handle this issue. I rolled double threes. How do I get from point A to point B the best way for me and my players to use my game system? And the games that are rated really high, meaning not as good, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, those games tend to not give the player the best way to get from point A to point B in the best manner. And the games that are ranked really low are games that do have a way to get from point A to point B that is better than the other games. It doesn't matter how complex they are, but it does matter in that, yes, getting from point A is manageable, it's easy, it's understandable, I'm not wasting time, I'm not wasting rolls, I am getting from point A to point D and getting a result that will simulate whatever you're trying to do in your game system. So again, I could say, okay, you know what? Instead of 2d6, right? Let's just get rid of those. We're going to add in, maybe 1d10s. And we'll do that, right? 1d10. And we got a red and a blue, right? So now we can get zeros in our results, right? And in this case, the Red Sox won 9-5 against the Blue Jays. No, look at that. And now we can roll again. And it's a 7-2 victory for the Red Sox. All of a sudden now I've changed something in my game design. and now the numbers can go a lot higher. So now I'm going to have to put something in, like season indexes for each team, and give them different stats that you're going to have to add or subtract to these to make them more reasonable, because, not everyone's going to be scoring 9 runs a game. I mean, if you roll, 9s all the time, we got a 4-0 game. Look at that. So looks like Toronto took that one 4-0. Now that's, pretty reasonable. But again, then I'm going to have to add in some more complexity to my game, because each team's going to need to have some kind of adjustment on their roll, either up or down, so that they have the proper, if this team scored, say, 6.4 runs per game, right? In a 0 to 9 system, the most common number is going to be 4.5, right? So 4.5, and if I need to get to 6.5, so I'm going to have to add 2. If another team only added, say 5, we'll just say 4 runs, then I'm going to have to subtract either 0 or 1 point to give a more fair and accurate simulation to my game system. So, game complexity, just because your game is super complex doesn't mean it's a good game. Having good complexity and having something that can add to the game, I think, though, is a good thing, because, as I mentioned, when Dave Gardner plays his quick play games, and there's other people that do it as well. A couple dice rolls will give you the outcome, and that's great because you can simulate a season. It doesn't take you 4 months to do it. You can have a whole season done in just a couple rolls, one afternoon, or whatever it takes. I mean, there's advantages to quick play games, right? If you don't want to spend an hour per game, 162 games, it's 162 roughly hours that you're going to be spending replaying, which is going to take you months and months or years and years to play, depending on how often you play it. So there are advantages, but of course there are disadvantages to quick play games, because you don't get the flow of the game. You don't get those moments where you have something happen that you experience at the time. Bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, runner on first, down by a run, and the player at the bat hits a 2-run home run to win it, right? You don't get that feel, you don't get that enjoyment, you don't get that experience by playing the quick game games, right? So there are disadvantages as well. So let's talk about adding complexity. Obviously, as we talked about, adding complexity doesn't make your game better, doesn't make it worse. It's just adding more things to the game, right? Because we can just simply have a chart that says out, single, runners move 1 base, and you roll on the chart, and then you move the players and you get the outs and you do everything you need to do, right? Or you can have charts that represent, okay, you got a runner in first, balls hit to right field. What happens to the runner in first? Does he go from first to second? Does he go to first to third? Is there an error on the play where the runner is going to be safe instead of getting caught? When you start thinking about adding more to your game, adding more feel and flow of actually playing the game and simulating the game, then you're talking about adding more complexity, right? If I just have a single on a chart, it's going to be different than a game where I have a runner on first and I hit a single into right field, and now I've got to decide what happens to the runner, if he's going to move up from first to second or first to third. Does the outfielder make an error? Does he make an error on the throw? All kinds of things can happen that you can simulate in your game. And like I said, the reason this kind of came up, and I really was thinking about it in the different game systems out there, is we had a game the other night between the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Chicago Cubs. It was a game from April 11th. That was the actual play date of it. From our 2019 Game of the Day 2019 replay. We're using Triple Play Baseball. And we had a situation come up. And Triple Play Baseball, for those of you who don't know, is based upon the old Pursue the Pennant system, which is a very in-depth game system. There are several like them out in the market currently. There is Dynasty League, which is probably a little bit more well-known than Triple Play Baseball. And there is Internet Baseball League, which also uses the same system. And, of course, there's Triple Play. And each one of those three games got a different rating on my review scale, based upon how they get from point A to point B and what they bring. Just because it's a complex game doesn't mean it's a good game if it can't get you from point A to point B in a reasonably good manner with good thought out design. So, we were playing Triple Play Baseball, and we had a runner, the Cubs. We were in the bottom of the 12th inning. Game was tied. And Jason Hayward gets on first base. I think he got walked, actually. And so he gets on first base, and there's one out. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, cool. All right, what are we going to do here? We rolled and Jason Hayward had, he has a terrible jump rating, which means the ability to actually steal a base. He's got a 1 rating, which is pretty bad. It goes from, I think, 1 to 5. I think it's what the jump ratings are. And the pitcher's got a hold rating, and the pitcher that was up was pretty decent. I think it was Lariano for Pittsburgh. And I could be wrong on who the pitcher was. But anyways, so complexity was added to the game, because in some games, you just roll for the person on first base to see whether or not they get the jump or not. And if they are some games, you just, you just say, I'm stealing, and you roll, and they have a success rate. And if they're successful, they make it. And if they're unsuccessful, they don't make it. But with the more complex system, they have a roll to see if you get a hold rating and see whether or not you get the jump or not. Again, he only had a 1, so he had a very small chance of this happening. But I thought, he had a 7 steal rating, which is pretty decent. It goes from 1 to 10 rating, and 7 is pretty decent. So I thought, well, if he can get the jump, then possibly, he might be able to steal, because he's got a pretty good steal rating. He just doesn't get the jump because he doesn't steal very often. But when he does try it, he can be successful. So we rolled for the hold, and sure enough, he got it. He got the attempt. So he was like, oh, cool. So next thing was to see the steal rating. So his steal rating was, like I said, I think it was a 7. The catcher, I don't recall, might have added 1 point to it. So I think he went up to like an 8 on it or whatever. And we rolled again. And this time it was stolen base plus catcher error chance. So we were rolling to see if the catcher had an error or not. And I don't remember who the catcher was for. I think it was Cervelli for Pittsburgh. I mean, that makes sense. And he had a pretty high number. Didn't look like he was going to make an error, but sure enough, he rolled an E2 and gave the error for the runner to go to third, but also gave him an option to run for home as well. And so we did that option, and sure enough, Jason Hayward came around to score, and walked off in the steal E2 round third, come home. So I got to thinking about, of all the games that I currently own, I cannot think of another game that simulates that actual play as we played it out with Triple Play Baseball. And because Triple Play Baseball is a little bit more complex. So those of you who haven't watched our review rating show yet, I try not to spoil anything, but spoiler alert coming up, just so you know. I rated it as my 5th best game. and which was quite a surprise because this is a newer game for me. Not much is known about this game, and I think a lot of people were shocked and surprised to see triple play baseball that low. So obviously number 1 is the best, number 17 is the worst in the ratings, and it came up in number 5, which beat out a lot of really, really good games to get to number 5. And at the time of the review, I said, well, the reason that is the case is because what we talked about in this episode. Sure, it is a very complex game, but it has a way to get the players from point A to point B really well, and it has a little computer assistant that will take all the charts and break down all the charts. You just put the information in, and it'll give you the result of the play, which makes transition really quickly through all those charts. And not that the charts are horrible, it's just having to go through, I mean, there's like 12 to 15 pages of charts. You got to flip through the pages to get to the right chart. Then you got to roll in the chart. You got to look for the modifiers. You got to see the result. Then you're going to have to do that again. It literally took us 4 dice rolls, right? Because we needed to see whether or not he got the hold or he got the attempt, right? And then he got the stolen base, and then it was so it was 3 rolls because it was the then it was the error. No, it was 4 rolls. So we got the hold rating, right? And he got the attempt. Then it was the steal attempt, which ended up being a stolen base and a possible error. The third roll was the error on the catcher, and then the fourth roll was his roll to come home from third, and it walked it off. So it was 4 rolls, 4 different charts, which could have taken us, a little while to go through, if we were playing through, an actual, with the charts and stuff. But literally it only took us like 2 minutes in the actual gameplay because of the triple play assistant. And that's kind of why this game is very complex. It adds a lot of things to the game system, but it has a way for players to get from point A to point B really well. And like I said, I cannot think of another game system out there. There are lots of game systems that will, error on the catcher on the throw, and the runner is going to move from second to third. But in this special case, he also had the option to run home as well. And I don't know, I was looking at all the different games that I own, and I don't think I actually have one because adding all of that extra complexity to their game wouldn't probably help, if that makes sense. The designer at the time was like, oh, okay, this play happens maybe once a year, maybe a couple times a year. Sure, error on the catcher. I'm pretty sure just about every game I own has something built into it where guy tries to steal and it's an error on the catcher, and sure enough, it's an error, and so he's going to move to third base. I would say 90% of them, if not 95 to 100% of them, have that built into it. So sure, but adding the extra complexity of saying, okay, the runner can also try to go home on this rare, basically, this rare play that we just happen to have come up not as a rare play, because I'm sure there's probably, rare play result on some of these games. It might say something like, runner tries to steal, ball goes into center field, runner tries to go home, type, I don't know, like a rare play result. Sure, I mean, that's the situation. But we didn't actually get enough for like a rare play or anything. This is just from actual gameplay, actual charts and stuff. So that's kind of brings me back to, what I started talking about. Is complexity in games, is it good? When is it good? When is it not good? And in this specific situation, I thought, without this extra complexity built into this game system and a way for me to get from point A to point B easily, that would have been a lot of extra complexity built in for something that happens very, very rarely. But because of the triple play assistant, it made it so smooth and easy. It was just, sure enough, couple minutes, and we had the play result out, and it was a walk-off steal attempt by Jason Hayward for the Cubs, and they walked it off in spectacular fashion, and probably a game that I will think about and enjoy for a long time to come, because I was actually there and experienced this live as opposed to like a quick play game. Again, nothing against quick play games. They're great designs and great great way to simulate games and get things quickly and good game results, but you're not going to get the same experience from the game that you get from, say, triple play baseball that we just experienced. So when is it a good thing? When is it a bad thing? Again, good thing for game complexity, I think, is anytime you can add something to the game that doesn't add or slow it down. And if you add it in the right way, I think adding complexity to game design is great. I think there obviously is a lot of house rules people use to add in complexity to games to make them more rounded than the game design actually was. If you look at one of the most popular modded games out there, APBA, it's basically because players like the system that APBA has for their basic game, but they want more complexity built into it. And probably, like I said, the most popular, downloaded, used mod for any game out there is the Merino boards, or the, what is it, DVASL or something like that, the DVAL system, which is a homebrewed mod for the APA system. So adding complexity to games is great as long as you can get the functionality for your players to get from point A to point B in a reasonably and timely and good manner. And so, yeah, that's the discussion I have for you guys. And I thought I was going to do a live stream, but I thought, well, people's schedules nowadays are a little messed up. I'm actually at work today, and even though I'm at home, and I thought, well, if I get interrupted, I can just put this recording on pause. Fortunately, I didn't get interrupted, but so there you go. That's kind of my thoughts. If you look at my reviews, you'll see the games that I thought are well designed, whether they're complex or not. More complexity you build into your game, the